Hey crew, it's Pitt, and I'm back with a little bit something different. Today I'm going to be talking to you about something that is almost certainly going to step on a wide variety of toes, so I'm going to go ahead and start where I normally end. Hi, I'm Pitt, and I hold some severely unconventional beliefs. I have written an entire book about them. I have a tendency to step on toes when I relay those, and it is not something that I apologize for. I am here on a mission, on a purpose to bring as much truth as I possibly can to humanity. That is an incredibly heady thing to say, but I say it with the most humility that I can possibly muster. I have been given a gift of discernment. I believe that it came from the Creator, but it steps on an awful lot of toes when I relay the information that He has given me. We will be talking today extensively about why not Jesus and what instead. And I have done a video, it will be linked up here, about why the Bible cannot be the source of authority. I feel that that is a fairly extensive understanding, a fairly extensive explanation. It is the very first video in a playlist that is also linked up here that is going to be called, or that is called, An Unconventional Bible Study. It started off as lessons from the book, and it evolved to the Unconventional Bible Study because it took an unconventional direction. It is apparent from reading the actual text of the book, if you take off those glasses of predestination, that what is portrayed by the control systems that are religion is not exactly what is contained in the book, that there are several discrepancies, that there is discordance inside of the book, often within the same chapters. Things that are said are directly, explicitly countermanded within the same chapter of the same book. That is a problem, right? The understanding that morality comes from the understanding of the Holy Bible, either the Old Testament or the New Testament, is a fundamentally flawed one. The understanding that we are formed from Christian values here in the United States is in part true, right? Most of the people who created this country were indeed Christians, but they had a wide, disparate set of beliefs. Some of them thought it was perfectly fine to drink alcohol. Some of them thought that you would burn forever in hell if you did so. Some of them found it perfectly fine to praise and worship by dancing, and some of them thought that you would burn in hell if you did so. A wide variety of understanding. There is, however, another alternative, right? I believe in God fully, emphatically. I believe that there was a creator to the universe. I believe in microevolution and not macroevolution. I talk about that quite extensively in other places as well. I believe that God created us with purpose and intention, and therefore this is not a prison planet. It is intrinsic to that understanding that you understand that the concept of original sin is not a good one, right? What was the original sin? According to the Bible, it was eating from a tree, right? And receiving wisdom, the ability to discern good from evil. But there are several problems with that, and we will hit them quite briefly, right? First off, there is the fallibility of God. If God is the true, infinite, all-knowing, all-possessing, powerful being that I believe that He is outside of creation, then it is inconceivable that He would not know that these people would eat from this tree, that He would have put it in a different place. In addition to that, Adam was instructed not to eat from the tree, but Eve was not, and there is no reason to believe that He would have conveyed to Eve that instruction. Why would He? It doesn't occur to Him to eat from the tree. She was not told not to. In addition to that, what did you get from the tree? The ability to discern good from evil. The knowledge of good and evil. It was the knowledge of good and evil is intrinsic to the story, right? Well, if you don't know the difference between good and evil, then you don't know that it is evil to disobey the directions of God. So even if she had received the instruction, she didn't know that it was evil not to follow the instruction. That is a whole series of problems. Now, you can apologize for those. People do. They go to school every single day to get the correct apologies for all of the inconsistencies in the Bible. There's a lot of them. The knowledge of good and evil is what separates us from the animals. It separates us from the lesser species in a very real way. Dogs don't debate on whether it is good or evil. They might debate on whether they'll get punished. That is a level of thinking, but it's not our level of thinking. It's more than the level of thinking that a lizard has. A lizard has no concept of punishment, but a dog does. They are slightly separated. There has been, throughout history, moral systems, and some of them you may not agree with, but they were moral systems. We can find recorded by Plato in the Republic, pre-existent to Jesus by several hundred years, a moral system outlined. And not only that, but intrinsic flaws in governmental systems due to moral decay. Those are intrinsic to the text, and they are completely 100% outside of Judaism or Christianity whatsoever. It was known. Murder was bad. Theft was bad. These were things that are existent outside of the understanding of Christianity. There is an intrinsic knowing within yourself what the law of God is. It was brought to my attention from Jason from Green Country Agroforestry. Please go check him out. He does mainly gardening, but he gets into some of the esoteric details as well. He pointed it out to me, and it is self-evident once you have seen it, right? You know what the law is. Do you want to be murdered? No? Well, don't do it to someone else. Do you want to be stolen from? No? Don't do it to someone else. Right? It is almost as if the whole of the law was indeed do unto your neighbor as you would have them do unto you. Almost as if that was a golden rule that we can find all over the world. You can find that in India, right? It is part of the Hindu traditions, which predate Judaism by a significant amount. You can find that in the Germanic traditions. You can find that in the North American traditions. You can find it scattered throughout Africa. It is an intrinsic understanding to humanity. It was merely recorded in this one book and attributed, therefore, to the book. But it was existent prior to the book, and it will be existent once that book is finally dismissed. There is an intrinsic understanding of God. That is where we need to get. Not to the control systems with their wide variety of what you can do wrong, but instead with a very narrow scope of how you can do right. You can discover within yourself the ability to balance yourself between all of the virtues and the vices. Those are intrinsic to you in the exact same way that you know that you do not want to be murdered or stolen from. You know that you want to be treated with kindness. Kindness is the balance between love and wrath. It is given the appropriate affection in the appropriate way automatically. And so you should treat people with kindness, neither wrathful nor necessarily loving them. Loving is kind of something that needs to be earned. It is misapplied. There are people out there that while you should not hate them, you probably shouldn't love them. Adolf Hitler is a very good example of that, right? Adolf Hitler was not a good person. You should condemn his actions, not necessarily hate him as a person, because he was a soul on an experience and he was exactly misguided. I am not excusing his actions, but he was a representative of God who was trying his best, as misguided as it was, to help humanity. And again, misguided. And you can be angry with him. That is a function of wrath. Or you can choose to forgive him, which is a function of love. But you should treat the people that you meet with kindness. Whoever they are, the default should be kindness. That is an intrinsic law that is built into you. You want to be treated kindly. You should be in a sexual union with a single partner. That is true for almost everyone on the planet. Some very small percentage of people are called to never have sex. Some very small percentage of people are called to multiple partners. But it is a vanishingly small percentage of the people. Most people are called to be in a sacred union with one person. And you know you don't want to be cheated on. Being in a sacred union is an intrinsic understanding. Next up, we got gluttony and denial, right? You are meant to eat things. That's why you have a stomach. You are meant to eat meat and sugars. You can digest both of them. You are intrinsically created with the ability to consume these things, and so the denial of them without express reason is a sin. And there are many people that do not know that. But you like to eat, you should eat. There is greed and charity, which is greed is the love of the mortal coil, and charity is the love of the upper coil. One is clinging to the things of the earth, the other one is clinging to the things of the spiritual, and neither one is good. You should be generous. You should have things. You should give away things. Neither one to full exception, right? There should be a balance. It is intrinsic. You should have things. You know what you should have. You even know if it is too much. You know when someone else is in need, and you are able to identify that, and so you should meet that need if you are capable. That is generosity. It is an intrinsic understanding. If you see someone who is starving, you're going to feed them, right? If you are a decent human being. If you see someone who is thirsty, you are going to give them water. If you see someone who needs clothing, you're going to give them clothes because you can identify with that. It is an intrinsic understanding within yourself. You have pride and humility, right? Pride is taking too much credit for yourself, building yourself up, even to the point of divinity. Humility is the exact opposite of that. It is not taking the credit for the things that are good for you. And there is a balance to be stricken between that. I like to call it thankfulness. I don't know if that is quite right, but being thankful that you can do good work, but understanding that it does not make you better than anyone else. You don't want anyone else thinking they are better than you. It is an intrinsic understanding that you are not better than other people. We have problems with all of these slots, but every single one of them has a balance that is intrinsic to your understanding upon reflection. You understand that you don't want it done to you. That is the law. That is the fundamental understanding of the law. And if you are following that intrinsic understanding within yourself, then you are following the law of God. If you are standing in contradistinction to what you understand about what is right, then you are in sin. And it is simple, right? It is that simple. God is existent whether or not anyone's book has recorded him accurately, and I do not think that any of them have, even mine, right? I do talk, the very first, the real chapter in this, chapter 1, is extensively talking about the divine and my understanding of it. I can be wrong, right? I do not claim that I am the only possible understanding, but I do have a greater understanding. I have described in this book how I have healed myself. I asked for healing. I got shown how to do it, and it is through the manipulation of the electromagnetic forces of creation, which is the Holy Spirit. It has allowed me to heal a cyst in my throat. I have healed a shoulder injury from 20 years ago. I have healed my back injury from 10, 11 years ago. I healed my leg from 5 months ago. These are things that are intrinsic through self-reflection. Nothing in here is dependent upon any doctrine or dogma from anyone else. It is from these fundamental understandings of self. It is from the finding of the balance between the virtues and the vices, not clinging to either one of them. The outlay of that responsibility, that self-reflection that is necessary for finding that balance, the outlay of that to someone else is victim mentality. It is putting upon someone else the thing that is more likely, more beneficial for you to take upon yourself. The improvement of you is dependent upon you, not upon casting it upon someone who died 2,000 years ago. That is a fundamental misunderstanding. There are a lot of fundamental misunderstandings in the Bible, the Logos being one of those. I believe that God is existence, right? We talked about that. I believe that God has limited himself from the infinite void into the finite creation. That moment of transition is the beginning. When he went from infinite into finite is the beginning. And in the beginning, he created the Spirit. The Spirit is the definition of God limited into the creation. It is quite literally the foundational material from which all things are created. He created, at the moment of the beginning, every single atom that is in existence anywhere. All of the elements perfectly created in stasis. And then he decided that creation needed to move, and he spoke and said, I am the light, and he became the light, and the light was good. That is how Genesis is supposed to read. Not, and he spoke and said, or anything like that. He said, I am the light. Not let there be light. I am the light. He became light. He became the separation of the waters. He became the dry land. He became the waters. He became the birds. He became the fish. He became all of the animals. Every single one of them, even you. He was never one particular, right? But the moment that he spoke, the moment he said, I am, he became the Logos, light, set into motion, the creation and the combination of all the elements, the accretion of our universe. Every single star came into existence from the speaking of I am the light. Every single planet from the separation of the waters. Every single part of the animals from becoming the creatures. Every single thing in existence anywhere is a representative of the Logos. And John, we hear that before, or in the beginning there was God, and with God was the Word, and the Word was God. That is not talking about a person. That is talking about the Word. What is the Word? Logos. What is the concept of Logos? The creative breath of God, the spoken word that creates. That is what Logos is. It is not any one particular person, but instead the I am thee. Every single part of creation recorded in Genesis, God became that thing. That is the Logos. It is the Spirit in motion. I serve God. I serve God through the Spirit, which is creation, as directed by the Spirit, which is creation. I try to take into account all of those virtues and vices in all of my interactions. I try to guide my life by the direct will of God for me. To place upon someone else what you are responsible for is victim mentality. We said that. It is evident from the review of the Bible that we did, right? I came from Christianity. That is why I hammer this. It is evident from that text that the sacrifice was never about redemption. The entire Old Testament, in fact, has no concept intrinsic in it of you being punished eternally at all. There is no lake of ever-burning fire for the souls who have sinned. There is the redemption from your sin in the mortal plane. You are told that you can make a sacrifice to do so, but you are also told quite often in the same chapter where the reference to the sacrifice is made, that there is no sacrifice absolutely intrinsic to it. That if you are in captivity and unable to make the sacrifice, merely turning in the right direction and saying your prayers is enough. Well, if it is enough in that circumstance, it was always enough. The only thing that has ever been required for you to be forgiven from that sin is for you to ask for it. It has never been about the animal that you sacrificed. There has never been any single point in history where killing a dove removed your sin from you in reality. There has never been a point where killing a goat or a cow or any other animal redeemed you from sin. And that is most especially true about humanity. There has never been a point where anyone else was able to atone for your sin. And that comes from the Bible. Now, I am fully aware that the New Testament contradicts that. I am fully aware of that, but that is an entire creation of the New Testament. You will not find a true reference to that in the Old Testament. I looked. I read it aloud on the internet. I did the word studies. I got behind the meaning of the words. There is an understanding of God that exists outside of any concept of any of the control systems. Now, by control systems, I mean any system that was designed to put guardrails upon your thoughts and beliefs. That includes religion, but that includes governments. That includes the clubs that you associate yourself with. the Masons, the Illuminati, bike gangs, criminal gangs, all of those are control systems. All of them put guardrails upon your thoughts. And some of those are good. There are definitely some good ones, right? Do not kill. That's a great one. But we have exceeded the morality of the Bible here in the United States. We have come up with better commandments than the 10 that are recorded. You don't believe me? Find me in the Old Testament. I want you to find me this, right? Do not rape. I want you to find in the Bible, do not rape. Do not commit sexual atrocities upon another person. You won't. You know what you will find? You will find excuses for that. You will find, well, if you rape a woman, you know what you got to do? You got to pay her father and then marry her. Does that sound like something that God would lay down? Doesn't to me. But you know what we have here in the United States? We have come up with a commandment that says, do not rape. That is unique in the history of humanity. That is not something that has been anywhere else. I know, that's a shock, right? Go back through history. Whenever the conquering armies conquered, they raped, they pillaged, they stole, they destroyed. Every single one of them, and many in the name of Christ. But we have come up with a better one, right? We have said, if you rape someone, you have to pay significantly, right? Not necessarily with your life, although I am not in disagreement with that particular penalty. But we have decided that there will be criminal penalties for that, and you will not find that in the Bible. We have exceeded the morals of the Bible in that case. In addition to that, we have also decided that it is not okay to kill people for blasphemy. It is not okay to hit somebody in the head with a stone because they picked up sticks on the wrong day. That has exceeded the morality of the Bible as well. There are many instances where we, as a people, have exceeded the morality of the Bible. We have created better ethics than the ethics given by the Creator God Himself. Yeah, I dismiss that. What we have done is evolved our understanding past the primitive understanding that God gave anybody the commandments. All of the understanding of the law is intrinsic to yourself, and it might have to be pointed out like Jason did for me. But I already knew it, I just didn't identify it, right? The understanding of it, once it was pointed out, was like, duh, right? That is not the same as what is recorded in the Bible. And while the 10 Commandments, for the most part, are perfectly fine, right? Have no God other than God. You're going to have a problem with that in Christianity, right? There is no God but God. Have no God except God. That's a big problem for Christianity. That is separating God into humanity, which is a major problem. It is not explained in the Old Testament at all. Right? That is a completely different thing than what is contained in the Old Testament entirely. What instead is what I do, right? Now, what I have in here, I do not consider doctrine. I am not trying to form a religion. I am not trying to become a religious icon. I am merely relaying what I do, right? I serve God. The God, the Creator, in the best way that I possibly can, through the internal reflection of the understandings that are intrinsic within us. I try to align myself in that manner. And many of those things are in direct opposition to what is recorded in the Bible. And so I cannot go to the Bible. The Bible is not a moral authority in any way, shape, or form, right? There are some moral allegories that you can take from the Bible. There is truth contained within it, but it is not truth in and of itself. I understand that steps on toes. That is why I started this video in that way. This is a very basic understanding, but it is understandably hard for people who are in the control systems. It was important for me to do this video, right? I have done a video on why not the Bible. I have done an extensive study that led me to that video. But this is the video of what instead, right? This is the video of, I am no longer serving the God of Christianity, the God of Judaism, and the God of Islam, which is all the exact same thing. But instead, I am serving the God of true creation. I am serving the God who exists outside of creation, and therefore, while represented by everything in creation, is not represented fully by anything within the creation. It is important that it is understood, right? The reason why I'm doing this video is because for a lot of people, there is no separation from Christianity and God. Whenever I say that I do not follow Christianity, the question is, what are you then? Antichrist? Not necessarily. The teachings of Christ has value. Not all of them, but most of them. Right? When he told you to give away all that you own and come and follow me, that was an allegory, not meant to be literal. Right? But if you take it as literal, which many people do, that is a sin. Right? Almost nobody is called to have nothing. That is true. Some people are. That is true as well. But it's probably not you. It's definitely not me. Right? I don't necessarily need an abundance of wealth. It would be nice. I would put it to use. But money for me is not the end goal. So for me, giving up the things is not that hard, right? But you are to have things, and I really do enjoy my creature comforts. I like having a nice, safe house that I can lock the door on. I like being able to turn on the lights and run the water. I like being able to take a shower in hot water. I love those things. Like, that is a creature comfort that I crave and I desire, but if I had to give it up, I could, right? That was what Jesus meant when he said that. And so taking that understanding that while it is nice to have these things, you can give them up, is a completely different understanding of you are not meant to have anything. It is important to understand that morality has existed outside of Christianity. Plato's Republic is one of the examples, but I'm going to use Socrates' Apology, which is also by Plato, for another one. Socrates died, right? He was condemned to death for two major causes, right? One was the corruption of the youth by teaching them things which were not what was the current understanding of things in Greece. And the second one was for not worshiping the gods of the state. It is apparent when you read through the Apology, which we have done, that he was a monotheist, right? He believed in a God. Now, he believed that there were forces, spirits, but they were not gods to him. They were merely the forces, the spirits. You find the same thing with Native Americans in the North American continent for sure, but even the South American continent, that they had the Great Spirit, which was God, and then they had the animal spirits, which were not. That was, you give thanks to the deer spirit as appreciation for the life that you took from the deer, right? It was showing appreciation for the bounty that you have collected to the one God through the expression of him by this spirit. It was not the worship of those spirits, but instead the worship of the one true God through those spirits. That is not far removed from what I do. I worship God through the Spirit that is creation, as directed by the Spirit that is creation. But Socrates died by his own hand, standing for the one true God. He would not give way. He could have avoided his fate, and he did not. He willingly went to it, and willingly is a stretch because he didn't really want to, but he was bound and determined that if this is the decision, that I stand for the one true God and not the gods of Greece, but instead for the one true creator God, then it is better for me to die for him than it is to live for deception. And you can find the fruit. You know what the fruit of that is? You know his name. You know who he was. He was recorded, and you probably would not know who he was if he did not stand for the one true God. You almost certainly would have never heard his name if he had not done so. That is an example outside of Christianity, pre-existent too, of service to the one true God through moral reflection. Socrates, while he was not our moral example, was a moral example for Greece. Their understanding of ethics and our understandings of ethics are not the same, in the exact same way that our understanding in Judaism is not the same, right? We have exceeded it. He had a lesser understanding, but he served his understanding to the best of his ability. He did what he thought was right, regardless of the consequences, as he was directed by the Spirit. There is another component to this, and it is why I use Socrates as the example. He also had what he called a demon. Now, this was not the Judaic understanding of a demon. It was not Christianity's understanding of a demon. It was an internal voice. It was the voice of inspiration. I attribute that to the Logos. Now, there is a voice. Right? Not everybody hears it apparently in the exact same way that I cannot envision. Most people can. Not everybody hears the voice. That's probably got to do with alignment more than anything, but I cannot be definitive on that. But most people do. Most people have the still small voice inside them telling them the correct action. That balance that we were talking about before, to treat other people with kindness. You know when you did not. You know when it was deserved and when it was not. That is an internal distinction that is intrinsic to you. And that distinction comes from the divine. There is the active voice within yourself where you are actively thinking things. And then there is the revelatory voice within yourself where you are not thinking about the things, but they instead get exposed to you. Right? My inspiration to write this book, my inspiration to write the other book, those were those things, right? It was an understanding that came to me from that still small voice. That is the opposite side of the coin of consciousness. Consciousness and unconsciousness is you thinking as the soul and the Logos speaking to you and you reacting to it. Now, your reaction to that is entirely subjective to your experience. And so if you have not done the balancing work, but instead are relying upon other people's conceptions of what is balance, then you might misinterpret that understanding, that voice that speaks to you. There is also a tempting voice that is an equal part of that, right? You have a voice that will lead you in the right way, and if you feed that voice, it will lead you in the right way every single time with no exceptions. You will know intrinsically, if you are balanced, whether you are getting out of balance by an action that you are taking. That is an intrinsic understanding of the law. That is the law of God written upon your heart, your philosopher's stone, where you transmute things. Socrates sits as an example, but he had this voice inside of him that he called a demon. And that was taken and extrapolated that was some god that he served, that was an external thing, but it's not. It was an internal voice that spoke to him correctly without fail. That is the Logos. That is without doubt the voice of inspiration speaking within you, not making the decisions for you, but giving you the option that is most likely to be correct. If you feed that voice speaks loudly. If you deny that voice, the other voice takes over. And that is the voice of temptation. That is the voice that is leading you towards destruction. It is equally represented, right? It is not equal to God, but is the tempting given by God for you so that you can make the decisions that are intrinsic to the experience. Now, there is a lot more to this, right? There is you being here directly at the will of God to accomplish a purpose that only you can. You were designated to be here for a reason. Now, I cannot tell you what that reason is, but you probably know. You probably know how you are to serve, and whether you do that or not, that is up to you. There is the eternity, right? I believe that we came from God and we return to God with zero exceptions. I do not believe in an eternal damnation. There is no good source material to do so. There is no reason intrinsic internally to believe that that thing would happen. All of this is to point out that it is perfectly attainable that you can have morals and ethics, which really are two separate things, right? Ethics are what the tribe has decided is correct. Morals are what you have decided is correct. They don't have to be aligned, right? I am not in alignment with abortion at all. Abortion is the ethics of the crowd. My morals say that killing children is terrible in every single instance, every single time. And so I am not allowed to partake in abortion. And so I don't, right? Your morals and the ethics of the tribe do not have to align. Morals are intrinsic internals. These are things that you have to make decisions about. And just like I made a decision about abortion, you have to make a decision about it as well. You have to make a decision about theft. You have to make a decision about deceit. You have to make a decision about pride. You have to make the decisions. You get to choose which one of those two voices you listen to. But if you are casting outside of yourself the responsibility for those decisions, you are doing it wrong. If you believe that someone else making a sacrifice for your wrong decision is going to rectify that decision, you are wrong. If you believe that killing an animal is going to cleanse you from sin, you are wrong. Those are not real things. This sacrifice in the Bible was to hit you in the pocketbook, not to redeem you in reality. It was to, right, you are contrite, you repent from your sin, and in order to give a physical manifestation to that, an actual consequence, you killed an animal. That was what you were depending upon for your money or food. And so it was a hit in the pocketbook to have to give up this thing, but the giving up of it was the physical expression of the repentance that you already had. You can get it without the sacrifice. All that has ever been required is the genuine turning of your heart away from the sin and towards the good. That has been true for eternity. It will be true for the rest of eternity. There is no real good reason to believe that there is a burning pit in hell. There is not. There are many reasons to doubt the Bible. Most of them come from the Bible itself, but there are some external ones as well. There's no real reason to believe that Moses ever existed. There's not a good reason to believe that David did. I'm getting a little bit off track with that, right? The important part of this whole reason for this video is there is a system outside of Christianity. There is a system outside of Judaism, and it does not have to be any of the other control systems. I talk about what I believe. It is intrinsic to the experience for the one that we do these things, that we learn from these things, that we grow from these things, and that we seek to walk up the spiral of choice with every opportunity that we have. That is the goal of existence. Most of us fail. Right, I cannot say all of us because I haven't met everyone. It is entirely possible somebody actually made it, but I don't think any of them have actually been recorded. That's where I'm going to go ahead and wrap this one up. Right, it was very important that I put this video out. It is exceedingly important that it is understood with no exception, right? I have done videos on why not the Bible. I have not done a video on what else instead. This is the video for what else instead. This is, you can serve God external from those control systems. It is an internal understanding. It requires work. It requires you to put in the effort. It is not something that is just gonna, oh, look. It's not going to happen like that. You have to do the reflection. You have to come to the understanding yourself. I can give you a guidebook, right? I can show you my lamp. I can be an example. I can show you the path I am on. You don't have to walk the same path. You can walk right next to me with slight variations. You might put these colors in a completely different way. You might have a different number of these balls than I do. That doesn't mean that either one of us is correct. And I believe the things that I put in here. They are not dependent upon external understandings. Everything that I have in this book came from an internal reflection through the process that we are talking about. Yes, there was divinely revealed parts to this. I do not even try to say that it was not. I believe that all of it was divinely inspired. That I merely had the guts to put it down where other people won't. There is another way. Jesus was not the way, the truth, and the life. He did not die for the redemption of your sin. He, at best, tried to put an end to the blood sacrifice, and then we created a whole religion about his blood, which he would probably be very upset with. That's where I'm going to go ahead and wrap this one up. Hopefully I brought a little bit of enlightenment and not too much confusion to a somewhat difficult topic. I understand. I hold some unconventional beliefs, and I do have a tendency to step on toes when I relay those. It is not something I do intentionally, but it's not something I apologize for. This understanding, this is something that I had to get out there, right? This has been on my mind for a couple of weeks. I don't know that I even got it out right, that I got it out in the way that I wanted to, and the delay really was trying to get the formulation of it correct. This is going to be a members first video for my couple of members. Thank you so very much. You have more than earned the early access to this. The other people will get it eventually, but members are going to start getting a lot more content early, if not exclusively. There's a lot of things that we need to talk about. There has been some significant revelations in my life. I am doing some wild things these days outside of myself, and members are probably going to hear about that first. So if you like what I'm doing over here, let me know down below. Give me a like, a share, a follow. Throw me a comment whether you agree or disagree with anything that was stated. Put it in the box down below, and if it remains respectful, it gets to remain up. Please understand, I have almost certainly heard your arguments. I have almost certainly investigated them with due diligence. I understand exactly what you mean. I do get the references. I do get the apologetics. I know about dispensations. I came from there. I wound up not there. So if you have an argument and I don't respond, it is probably because I have already dismissed it. The reasoning will be in one of these videos that is linked above. I am very open and honest about all of them. If there is something outside of what I've already considered, I will consider it. I will discuss it. I will talk about it, right? That is what we do over here. And if you have a valid argument for why Christ is the redemptive, bring it. I am willing to listen. That does not mean that I will change my viewpoint, right? I have considered this quite extensively. If you really like what I'm doing over here, hit me with that super thanks. Consider joining for a membership, picking up a copy of my book where I teach you about all of these things, or consulting me directly through the link provided down below. If you really, really like what I'm doing over here, there's a brand new button. It is called the Hype button, and if you use that button, it is free for you once a day. You can promote a channel in much more effective ways than just the like, the share, and the follow. So if you have found value in this, I would appreciate it if you would spend your hype button today with me. To the crew, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate every single minute that you are here with me, and I am praying for you every single day. Until next time, I love you. God loves you. You are perfect, whole, and complete just the way that you are. And this has been Pit State. Peace.